Hello everyone and welcome back to Quick Slants with Bethel University head football coach Steve Johnson. Quick Slants is a weekly program that gives you, the fans, the opportunity to ask the Bethel coach questions about the Royals, football or sports in general, or just seek the coach's wisdom about life events that are going on. In this week's episode, the coach talks to us about the tough loss against St. Thomas last Saturday. He shares with us what he's expecting against Augsburg this week, and the coach revels in his beloved Cubbies winning the World Series. Let's get right to Quick Slants. So let's welcome back Coach Johnson, the very excited Coach Johnson. So we'll get to the Cubs in a moment, though. But let's first of all begin with team updates from you.
Team updates, Zobrist is the MVP, and Hendricks is great and should never come out. Not the Cubs. Team updates, we're fairly healthy. You know, pretty obvious by now that Bridge is out for the deal. He's probably, you know, he could almost play football, you know, pretty soon, but it wouldn't be worth it. It wouldn't be something. And also, you know, something for me, and this is not, you know, to slight anybody or anything else, but the opportunity for other people to step up, and for us, Gunnar Bloom has been just phenomenal. Brady Baumston, we've got Joshua Ness even at the running back, and so we're just, you know, kind of blessed there, but Bridge being out, and he's just encouraging those guys, but Bridge being out gives those guys a chance to shine and go, and they're a little bit different backs. Gunnar is a little bit more like backs that we've had, to where, you know, he kind of gets, the more carries he gets, the better he gets, and we want him to feel that, and it was tougher when we had so many good guys. It's like, you don't want to complain about having too many good backs, and I'm not. But that's kind of that. So we're pretty good. We're pretty healthy, and excited to keep rolling here.
The one thing I noticed about Brady that really isn't, we haven't really talked about very much on the show, is in the return game, he's really been solid for you.
Yeah, Brady he's a tough kid, and he is a great kid, and he's a great player, and, you know, he's kind of a diminutive fellow, but that is, you know, that doesn't bother him a bit, or us. He's got great hands. You know, when somebody's a good receiver, part of it is that you have to be a little bit more fine when you throw to a guy like Brady. But he's a great receiver, and he's got really good hands. But he's a little tougher. You know, Gunnar feels like he's a foot taller when you include, you know, length of his arms, and so Gunnar, those guys. It's really important to us that our running backs are, you know, players that can catch the ball and block and everything else. And Brady is a tough kid, and he can really run. So a lot of excitement, you know, when you have that kind of 1-2 punch or 1-2-3 punch, it's really tough on a defense.
Well, let's look back at this last week's game against St. Thomas. A tough loss. What are some things you take away from that game?
You know, it was a tough loss, but it was also, you know, I mean, our guys really played well and pretty hard, as we, and I shouldn't say pretty hard. Our guys played hard, and our goal going in was to what's next, and not just have that be a cliche, but you know, sometimes a play happens, and you're kind of, you bring that next play, like say it's something, you know, not that great, you did bad, and you bring that next one in, and we give the example of, you know, just, you know, like in tennis, you make one bad shot, you don't want to affect your serve, because there's, you know, hundreds of points you're going to lose and win all day. And so what we talked about is like, what's next? Last play was good. Okay, what's next? You know, and just boom, and popping right into that deal, and just getting in it. And it needs to be our way of life. And I think that our world, the more and more, it just kind of, we float through, and we just want to be a group of guys that for this time that we're together, we're going to build in the habit of, okay, what's next? Okay, great, what's next? Okay, what's next? You know, and I'll have to listen to that philosophy after the Cubs won last night, because I keep going back to last night. But anyway, so that was, and our guys did that, and we were physical, and we, you know, the physicality of our team in the midst of that game was amazing. The Tommies are a physical, really good team. Some of their physicality was a little late, and maybe a little bit, in my opinion, a little bit. I don't know if I want to say cheap, because it sounds like a baby, but a little excessive toward maybe trying to hurt somebody. And I don't like it. You know what I mean? And but our guys didn't react bad to it, and they just kept playing hard. And so it was a well fought game by two teams that are pretty good, and know each other a lot, respect each other a lot, and it was really a fun game. We had 2 touchdowns called back. That's 7 for the year, and one of them was called back because they said the left guard was too deep in the backfield, which was baloney. And then another one where a guy was Jackson Canfield was running a post route, and the guy had inside out coverage, and which is he runs into him, and Jackson gets called for a pick, and really the goofiest call ever. And so those things affect the game. So you have 2 touchdowns called back, and it makes the whole thing different. And then, their last touchdown was, we're trying to make something happen, and he, bounces a 90-yard running play from their own 10. So it is what it is as far as the score, but as far as how we played and competed, I couldn't have been happier with our guys.
I want to ask about kind of the next play philosophy, because that touchdown that Bryce had where they wound up calling it back on a really questionable call if you look at it. Mm-hmm. Is it hard when you're jumping out on a top 4, top 5 team in the country to get a touchdown like that and then have something taken away on a really iffy call? Is that hard to keep motivated at that point? Well,
that's that whole thing. That's why we're predicting that stuff like that's going to happen. And so that's why I was really proud of our team. We made really good things happen, and we had some bad things happen, and we didn't react and fold and whine the whole time. We might have mentioned a couple things to the refs about it, but it was never out of control or anything that was bad. It's just that the game might have been a little bit big for that time or whatever. But that is the whole thing, Robert, to where that's exactly what we're talking about. What's next now? You've got to get to what's next after you get a touchdown. After you have something that just kind of takes your breath away, you got to get to what's next. And that's the meaning of that whole thing. It's like, but it can happen on the other end. You can get a touchdown there and think, oh, we're going to do this all day, baby. You know what I mean? I've been on that thing too, and you can't do that. You can't, I'm not saying that you don't enjoy that deal, but you can't stay there. And that's the same thing with you get a bad call or a bad play. You do something wrong and you screw up, and you can't sit there. If our right guard who got called for that, and it wasn't justified, but if he sits in that, if he wallows in that all day, he's going to screw us up later and himself. So that's a good point by you. That is what's next all about, those hard things.
Andrew Ragsdale and Josh Dalkey seem to be everywhere on Saturday, made a lot of tackles for you. What are you seeing in these two that really is progressing them as the season's gone on?
They're really growing. Josh Dalkey has been a guy who has been in there for a long time for us. I mean, he's a leader, stalwart guy, but he's had some ups and downs, and part of it is we're missing a guy named Zach Inhoos, who is just really a great player, and he had hip surgery before the season. He'll be back next year, but he and Josh were starting a lot last year along with Landon Mathis, and so those guys were going, but Andrew Ragsdale has just going leaps and bounds. He just keeps growing and growing and growing. Just really proud of him and Josh in those things. And we need our linebackers to play big in the scheme and in the stuff. And so they've done a nice job. And Andrew is what happens with these guys, especially at linebacker, is you can't be thinking. And Andrew's a real sharp guy, and he's a smart student, and when he can get out of the thinking and just kind of react and play and get your reads and boom, explode, that's when you're a better football player. And that's what we're seeing with him. And it doesn't hurt that Dawson Brown's right in that linebacker core helping out with that stuff too.
This week you take on Augsburg. The last couple of seasons there's been some really crazy games for you. Yeah. Did we check the weather report to see what Saturday was going to look like?
Yeah, you're bringing back nightmares, and I don't. This show is making me have nightmares. No. Augsburg, Frank Hagee's a crazy guy over there, and they just had this Arden Scott where he is an unbelievable player, and we kind of struggled with him. But 2 years ago, you're talking about we were on our way to the playoffs, and we had an AC field, and it was 63-62, and we lost. One of the most disappointing losses because it cost us so much. It cost us a conference championship. It cost us a playoff berth. That was one of the hardest things to swallow in my 28 years here, and so that was one. And then last year, we're kind of in control of the whole game, and we didn't have as much to play for. but they made a comeback, and you have to give them credit for that. But Scott's a ridiculous player. So this year they're having a little bit of, you just don't replace a guy like that, and you kind of got to replace him with a few guys. But at the same time, they lost, a couple of receivers, including Sonnefeld, and so that they've been a little bit inconsistent offensively this year. Defensively, they've always put pressure on their defense because they're crazy offensively, and they score. They either get rid of the ball or score so fast that their defense is out there, and that really tests you. And so that'll be a tough thing for them if they don't keep the ball away from us. Their defense is gonna, we'll wear them down probably a little bit.
Let's talk about their offense a little bit, because Ayrton Scott graduates. What are you seeing in their offense that poses some challenges for your team?
Well, they're doing some good things, and Coach Hagee and his guys, Drew Prevett, they're really good guys, and they're creative, and if you get too creative and you want things to develop real fast, you're gonna get smoked by that. So what they're doing a good job of controlling the defense with quicker passes, and then if you kind of switch your coverages around because you can't get to the quarterback, then they'll get into a 5-step drop, and then it becomes a Skelly type thing. So they're they're throwing the ball quite a bit, and some people think, well, you can't run well, and I think even the Vikings, people are talking about the Vikings. I think their biggest problem seems like that they just don't have a running game to keep those guys at bay a little bit, and that would be Augsburg's problem. So to combat that, you've got to have that short passing game going. So.
Lorenzo Hernandez, leading their defense right now, seems to be a real big playmaker for them.
Yeah, he's a good player, and I'm impressed with their defense. They really play hard, and you can tell the guys you can really tell they're together. They care about each other, and they're playing hard, and I think that it bodes well for the program. And it's hard to not win as much as you were, and in some ways it's pretty hard to be as exciting every week as you are when you have a guy like Scott. But I think that you got to do those things in different ways, and that's kind of been what's your rock, what's your base, where are you? And I think they're trying to find that a little bit.
Well, before we get to our fan questions, let's discuss the World Series. So tell us a little bit about your impressions.
I don't know how long your show is, but phenomenal time. Cleveland Indians, I liked them a lot before. I like them now again, and then I liked them before we started playing. But when you're really 4-1 team, it's a weird deal. But I grew up in Chicago, and as a little boy, I was nuts about sports, but probably mostly baseball and the Cubs. And when I was like 12, I went to the game just about every day, and would take the bus to the L. And my parents had no idea where I was, and they're lucky I wasn't a little bit more of a punky kid or something. But I've been a Cub fan my whole life. I walk into the stadium, and everybody knows that I cry at the drop of a hat, but I remember every year, especially the first game, first couple even, I'd walk up the ramp and see that field, and I'd just be crying. And so anyway, lifetime Cub fan, obviously frustrated by a lot of stuff, but boy, I just love how they play. And then Zobrist, who's a God guy, who's just a terrific guy, gets MVP, and Fowler opens up the game off Kluber, who, Kluber strikes out 8 out of the first 9 in his other start, and he didn't strike out anybody yesterday, but they didn't think they could hit him. And Dexter Fowler, another God guy, hits the home run to center field, and we're off and running. Then Coach Maddon, who's my favorite, but I wanted to kill him last night. I didn't want Hendricks to get taken out, and then Lester came in with a guy on. I don't understand what he's thinking there, but then Lester's pitching great, and then Chapman So, but it's the coolest thing ever. I'm wearing all Cub gear right now, and I look like an idiot. I'm a 60-year-old, 12-year-old, but I got a W on my door, and got a W hanging at our condo that we live at, and my wife's having to grin and bear it, but she's a pretty big Cub fan too. We spent a lot of time in the right field bleachers in our dating life, so it's pretty fun.
I bet last night you had to be going crazy when Cleveland came back in that game.
We did. I have a son, Cornell. He's 28 or 9 or something like that, and he lives in New Mexico, but he came back for this to be with his dad, and it sounds really great, but he and I like, if I'm negative, he's punching me, and if he's negative, I'm punching him, and we can't. It's like it's really cool, but it's really not. It doesn't seem super healthy. So, but it all worked out, and my wife asked me this morning, "Are you and Cornell okay?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. Why? What's wrong?" Well, last night, so I guess we might have said a couple things, but anyway, I don't get this crazy about other stuff, but I was going nuts and thought we were blowing it, and when you're already Maddon, when you're already got a million zillion Cub fans that are like, ducking, because what's going to happen now, and then he just does some stuff that I thought was questionable that, takes you out of your comfort zone. I think it's what he's, obviously he's done it all year, and he's phenomenal. And you think as a head coach for my whole life that I'd be easier on the head coach, and I am, except last night. So it told me a little bit how important the Cubs are to me, and I know it's a sickness, and I'll go to counseling tomorrow.
Well, let us head into our fan questions on that note. Mike from St. Paul says, I know it is not your style to be thinking this far ahead, but do you see these last 2 games as a chance to evaluate who will be your quarterback for next season, since you have 2 stud underclassmen?
That is my style, and it's even my job to think ahead, Mike, is that there is a real, I probably wouldn't talk about it necessarily. That wouldn't be my style, but we always want to think ahead, not necessarily next year, but next week, but then also next year, and then the next year after that, and those things are really important. And so, evaluating our quarterbacks is something that we want to do every day, but even in the midst of this too, and Jake Marsh he's the guy right now, and he's really doing a great job, and then Trey Anderson is, just yesterday at practice, I'm just like, whew, man, he just does some great things, and we just need to utilize him, and he's a great kid and a great athlete, and we've got to, do the best we can with that, and so we want to have 2 good quarterbacks that can help us win games, and we do have that, but then where do you kind of draw the line to where, okay, if Marsh is the guy and he's just doing a great job in leadership piece, can Trey play somewhere else and back up at quarterback and stuff like that? But I just want to bring up here 2 guys that have been just fantastic for us and grown those guys, grown our team, and they've really blessed me and our staff and our team is Andrew DeZurek, who started the first 5 games or so and did a great job and did some things, and as he kind of gets replaced by this young kid, he could be a baby, he could be sulking, but what he does instead is teach and coach him and help. And I talked to him, how you doing? He says, I'm doing great, coach, I love you. And so it's like, holy cats, it's awesome. And then another guy, Joe Carlson, who forever has walked on here. He wants to be a coach someday, and he's going to be a great one. His daddy's a coach, but he's been this guy who, he's a scout team quarterback, and and our defense is seeing a better quarterback sometimes than they're going to see on Saturday, and he's never questioned anything. He doesn't, he just leads. He's just an amazing guy. And so those two seniors that are helping this freshman and sophomore become better for us. We have a thing that we talk about that we don't want to be a cliche, but you get better, build you for us. And that's give your gifts away, build your gifts, and then give them away for free, which means no strings, like, well, if I get this, then I'll do this, and that's just bull. And that's in life, same thing. But those guys are the epitome of giving their gifts away, giving them away for free, encouraging somebody to be better at the expense of playing time. And I think, boy, that's when you can really grow.
Our next question is from James from Bloomington. He says he is wondering if winning these last 2 games is so important to you to keep alive your streak of consecutive seasons without a losing record.
I'll be honest with you. I shouldn't say it that way because that insinuates that I might lie. But it's important. I don't think it's imperative. I don't think it goes with our philosophy of we got to go 1-0 this week, and that, one thing that's even impressive last night with the Cubs, they talked about in the rain delay that, nothing's changed. We're not talking about winning or losing. We're talking about grinding and being together and staying with toughness. So it's important that we, win every game. But to say that that's not important to me even, and I think to our program, and probably people wouldn't say it that much, but it is important that if we can win these next two, we'll continue the streak. So our last losing season would have been 1993, and that's something that we're proud of. I think that's probably legal proudness, but I think I do think it's important. But I'm not going to jump off. I'm not going to jump off the balcony if that record doesn't stay, but it is important.
23 seasons, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Sam from Owatonna would like to know, after playing St. Thomas, do you see them as a real contender for the NCAA Division III title?
Well, that's a hard question because we just haven't seen so many people. We just see so much good football in our league. And the teams that aren't winning a lot are really good. In fact, we're really good, and we're not in that mix right now. And the Tommies, they've got some confidence that is big, but what they really have is, and this isn't anything new, but they have a great defense, and when you have a great defense, and you can win all your games, and so they have some of those things. They have what they had last year. I don't know, their leadership with Gould at quarterback was extraordinary, and that's people underrate that. You can have the fanciest guy ever, but the leadership, Tom Brady can throw, he can do all those things, but I think his leadership might be, in the top three of his incredible gifts. And so, and I think they got a guy there that's really a neat guy, Fensky. And so, you never know, but I think with a defense like they have, that people just don't see that all the time, is that does give them a chance to. And we don't really talk about winning the national title. But if you can, I definitely call them a contender because they're going to be in it, and they're going to have a cakewalk. I think they're one of the top 4 teams in the country rank wise, and so they're going to have not a cakewalk, but they're going to have a pretty good chance to get to the final 8, and then you never know. But with a defense, when you have a great defense, that's where you're gonna be special.
Next up, we come with a person who did not send in their name. Actually, the reason behind this was there was a whole lot of people who sent me this question, so I'm making it generic here. Mm-hmm. What did you think of Joe Maddon bringing in Chapman so early in Game 6?
Because Game 7 too. I didn't like it. I think Chapman. I think he's a horse, and I think you can get kind of. But the thing is, I think Joe Maddon is unbelievable, and I think he's a genius, and I think he's incredible. So I don't mean it critical, but if you ask me what I thought at that time, I thought it was early. Not even for, even for that game, let alone that you might want him for the next game, for Game 7, and I think there's a lot of they're talking about pitch count and all that, and that velocity's down and all. Well, you add on top of that, the pressure is just ridiculous. And so I just think that, he wasn't necessarily worn out, but I just don't think I think he's an amazing talent, but I don't think he's got the character at this time to be able to handle what happened. And then he gives up a homer. He gives up. I felt like when he gave up a line shot last night in Game 7, I think that really, it kind of, I don't know about scared him, but and then you get a little tentative, and then you're not, and then he was having a little bit of trouble finding the zone, and is that fatigue or pressure, but it's both, it's a combination. So I thought it was too early in Game 6, and I thought it was too early in Game 7 too.
Next up, we have Craig from Chicago. He says, which one of the Cubs starters do you think will be the Cy Young Award winner this season?
I don't know, and Chris Bryant said something last night that I thought was so cool, is at the end of the game, and he said, I just can't explain. He is so happy, and he's had tears in his eyes. And I've never won. He goes, I've never won team awards. I've never been on this team, this World Series champion. You know what I mean? And he says, I've gotten those individual awards and those are nice, but this is way better. And that's kind of how I am, and I just like preaching that. And we're kind of like that. We don't have any player of the week and our team. We don't. Our captains are seniors. We don't like to have that guy, to have that deal. But I'll answer your question in a second here. But I don't care about that stuff. And I think that they all do that together. I think, if you take any body of the season, if you want to take the whole thing, I'm super proud of Kyle Hendricks and just what he does. And since I'm a Cub fan, I'm a pre-Greg Maddux before he went to the Braves. I still liked him when he went to the Braves, but I loved him when he was at the Cubs. And but he's like that guy, and just that. Oh man, I love how he, in the midst of everything going faster, it seems like Kyle Hendricks has the ability to slow things down and then just throw his little cutter things or whatever. But and then the Lester, you can't deny what he did and what he's doing, and so he's huge in there. And obviously Arietta's not really in that discussion this year, but he's an amazing player, and he had, because he's compared to his unbelievable season, it might get a little slighted to how great he was. But the one thing that I struggle with Lester a little bit is his yips thing, is that I'm really big into complete players, and it's even a thing that I struggle with Chapman. I like a guy who can pitch. I love his 103 miles an hour deal, but I just feel like you leave a little bit to chance, because the guy can shut his eyes and put a bat on that thing and that sucker's going, and you never, because it can almost hurt your feeling. The Cubs have this great feeling. That's why I loved what they had last night with Hendricks going, and he's a guy that's, pitching to contact more than some other people, and then the Cubs have this great defense, and it's like, I don't know, it just feels like you're leaving more to chance when Chapman's in. But anyway, I'd say if it was a Cub, if it's not Kershaw or whoever else they're thinking about, I'd say Kyle Hendricks.
Excellent. Next, we have Dave from Maple Grove. He says, Coach, they said that Jay Cutler returned and gave a big inspirational speech to his team before their win over the Vikings. Do you think he had an inspirational speech in him?
Yeah, evidently he did. Yeah, I heard about that same thing. And Cutler is, the sad thing I think about Jay Cutler is that he's kind of he's an up and down guy. It's exactly what we talk about in our football team, and as far as the character of our team and of our individual players. Like I want me to be, and I want my family, our guys, all that. I want us to be grateful, and make that a way of life. Tough, make that a way of life, and devoted to one another and the King, and make that a way of life. And where Jay Cutler can come up with an inspirational speech, if you come up with one of those every 8 games, you're going to be 2-8. And the Vikings lost that game, and but they'll come back from that. And the thing that's going to carry the Bears is that they are kind of growing defensively. They're pretty good on defense. Same thing with the Vikings. They're going to go as far as the defense is going to take them, and I think it's even bigger in the NFL. And what happens is the Bears defense is not as mature and as good as the Vikings defense, but the Vikings didn't have anything to stop the Bears defense from running to Bradford and punching them in the nose. They just didn't have any running game, and Coach Turner doesn't have much of a short passing game to kind of keep things at bay. That's my opinion.
I was thinking after the Cubs won last night and the Bears won Monday night, this is like Steve Johnson week here.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of weird, because this is how weird I am. I'm a little bit, I don't want to say this on national radio or anything, but I was a little bit, this is how weird we think, is that I want the Bears to get a really high draft pick. So if they lose to the Vikings, and I live 3 blocks from the Vikings stadium, and I like it when people are happy around me. I don't think the Bears are going anywhere this year, and I'm not crazy about Cutler and his up and down, just his character. So that one wasn't as big. That one wasn't even in the neighborhood of as exciting as the Cup deal. But the Hawks are playing well too, so that's good.
Patrick from Minneapolis asks, he says he sees the Vikings seem to be exposed now. Is that how you see it?
Not at all. I think you can't win all your games, and there's a couple things where a couple different plays and they beat the Eagles. I think there's probably a couple different plays and they don't win those. They don't beat the Packers. Football it's a crazy game, and there's momentum. You can call it that. I don't know what it is, but you got to make plays at the right time. And I think the coach Zimmer is going to fix the defense to where it's amazing. And you got to make some plays. It's a game of inches about 28, 35 times in a game where there's 130 plays. So I think one of the best things that happen really is that you kind of see what you need to do, and you kind of see here's where we need to fix, here's what we need to fix, and then you just play. And I think that the only way the Vikings will get exposed or be hurt now is if they kind of disintegrate from within. But if they stay together, and I think that their defense especially, they care a lot about each other, and that's kind of the coolness of sports when you rally together and kind of let's figure it out and do those things. But if you unravel from within, you're going to end up having a good speech from Jay Cutler, and you're going to win once in a while, and that's not good.
I was kind of surprised to see Coach Turner resign this morning too.
Yeah, so. He did, and so that's I don't know anything about that stuff, but maybe the philosophies are a little bit different than what Coach Zimmer wants.
Could be. Tim has our interesting question of the week. He says, Coach Jay, you seem like a guy who is really in tune with God, so can you explain this one to me? Why is it that as I get older, I lose hair in areas where I would like it to stay and grow it in places where it simply does not belong?
And that probably has something to do with the Garden of Eden. Probably something, Eve and Adam screwed up somewhere, and then God blessed us with that hair coming out of your ears and stuff. I don't know. But count it all joy when you encounter new hair spots. It says in James, or no, that's trials. But
close enough.
Yeah, just roll with it, baby. Cubs win.
Let's end with praise Him and hallelujah. Anyhow, so what are we praising the Lord about?
I praise the Lord about that He's good and He loves us, and He grows us and gives us tough stuff to fight through. That makes us stronger, and it's really a big deal if you care about stuff and if you care about people, and nobody doesn't want that, and that's a healer, and that's a love thing. And hallelujah anyway. Cleveland, I like Cleveland, and they lost, so hallelujah anyway.
Thanks for joining us this week, Coach.
Thank you, good fun.
We want to thank Coach Johnson for joining us on Quick Slants this week. If you have your own questions you'd like to ask the Bethel coach, please send them to us at stevejohnson@minorleaguesportsreport.com. That's stevejohnson@minorleaguesportsreport.com. Please have your questions to us by Wednesday evening so we can give the coach a little time to review them before we record the show. I'm Rob Pannier, the managing editor of the Minor League Sports Report, and we'll see you next